Hey y'all, it's Mary, and I'm so excited you're here for this month's topic, which is all about community. But before we jump into today's episode, we need to start with a little truth bomb. Y'all, we are all lonely and desiring belonging. This month, we'll explore ways to cultivate an authentic community, look at when it's time to let go of toxic friendships, how to actually make friends, and I'll even help you learn how to become a great friend. All right, guys, I'll see you inside this week's episode.
Welcome to the Living Fully Alive podcast with Mary Hyatt, here to help you find your authentic voice, learn how to love yourself, and embrace your life. And now, your host, life and mindset coach, body love advocate, and doTERRA Presidential Diamond, Mary Hyatt.
Hey y'all, it's Mary Hyatt, and I am so excited for today's episode. This is the fourth and final episode for this month's topic of community. It's kind of hard to believe that we are already at the end. We've had so many beautiful conversations this month about the importance of being a part of a community and how sort of primal our need for belonging is. Lindsay and I talked about what happens when a friendship becomes toxic and what you can do about it, how to sort of move away from unhealthy relationships and create some healthy friendships. We've talked about last week with our special guest, Lisa Welchel, we talked about how to actually make friends as an adult and some of the complications that come along with that. So we've covered a lot this month, and I thought that I would finish up this month's topic of community with sort of having a discussion around being a great friend. Obviously, we've talked about how to create friendships, toxic friendships, but this is sort of the one that I think gets left out the most, and that is, how do we actually be a wonderful friend? Because typically, in my experience, we have sort of a laundry list of things that we want people to do for us, ways that we want people to show up for us, ways that people could love us better, ways that people could give us better advice. And there's often a lot of complaining about sort of our friends being shitty or not being there in the way that we wish that they were there for us. But for me, and you guys know this because I am a life and mindset coach, I am a firm believer, y'all, that we are 100% responsible for our lives. And honestly, it's just going to be a better outcome when we can focus on ourselves. And so I thought for today's conversation, we'll start with a little bit of you guys know I use this phrase all the time, a little bit of a come to Jesus moment, which for those of you who are not from the South and have no idea what that phrase means, that is just a lovely little Southern phrase that essentially means we got to look at our junk. It is time to sort of ask ourselves questions that, it's sort of the truth serum kind of phrase, come to Jesus moment. And so the come to Jesus question for us today is, are you being a shitty friend? Because maybe, just maybe, the problem isn't your friends. I mean, maybe it is. If that is the problem, check out Lindsay and I's conversation about toxic friendships. But, when was the last time that you evaluated how you were showing up in your friendships? I think it's really easy for us to sort of shift the blame and to project, and it's a lot easier to find the things that other people are doing wrong, and we sort of can get caught up in that conversation that, God, it's their issue, it's their fault, it's their problem, and we don't often slow down to sort of flip the mirror back to ourselves and look at where are we contributing to the issues that we're experiencing in our friendships. Where are we showing up? Where are we not showing up? Where is our consistency? And so I think that there are amazing ways to be an incredible friend, a kind of friend that people just absolutely love, the kind of friend that pulls in people that are healthy, that pulls in people that are just those lifers, those people that you are going to want to spend life with. And I think it really starts with us, because when we are an amazing friend, when we are somebody that is magnetic and honest and loving and can hold space for people, oh my gosh, who wouldn't want to be our friend? Because what I hear a lot from people is that it's really hard to make friends, or we don't really know like how to do that. And to me, it just starts with showing up and being a great friend. I mean, to me, it's like when you are an amazing friend, people want to be around you. People are naturally drawn to you. People want to be in relationship with you. And as Bentley always says to me, he says, the love you give is the love you receive. And to me, I think that's so perfect, because it really is an exchange of energy. What we are offering is what we are getting back. And to put it plainly, to have great friends, we have to be a great friend. And being that great friend first is ultimately, again, what I have control over. I can't control anyone's behavior or make them treat me well, but I can control how I show up in a relationship. That's on me. And when we have people in our lives that are safe people, and we talked about this with in the last episode with Lisa Welchel about what kind of makes a safe person, to where you might vulnerably share with somebody, and what makes an unsafe person. So go back and listen to that episode if you want to have that little more clarity around safe people. But with safe people, there's a lot of room to be an amazing friend when there is sort of this reciprocal kind of relationship with where what we're giving is what we're receiving. It's sort of a back and forth, give and take kind of relationship. And obviously, as you sort of investigate and think about your friendships, it's important, of course, that we aren't giving too much, that the scales are unbalanced. And obviously, we sort of want to stay clear of becoming the 100% giver in a relationship, or the people pleaser, or sort of codependent. But there are some really powerful ways to show up in a friendship that when you take the lead and become a wonderful friend, it can shift the dynamics of your friendships in really meaningful ways. And I kind of go back to this idea of being the bosom friend. And I don't know about you guys, but I grew up watching Anne of Green Gables. That were books, and they were made into movies. And oh gosh, I mean, every Thanksgiving we would watch Anne of Green Gables. I mean, to this day, I just love Anne with an E. And if you haven't, watched those series, I think it was on like PBS forever ago. They're just the sweetest stories. And so you know what I'm talking about when I say bosom friend. I mean, that was Anne and Diana Barry, and they had this beautiful friendship. And there's this quote, and Anne says, "A bosom friend, an intimate friend, a really kindred spirit to whom I can confide my innermost soul. I've dreamed of meeting her all my life." And so that's what she says when she meets Diana. And when I think about a bosom friend, this kind of friendship is a rare kindred spirit that you can confide your soul with. It's your person. It's the person you seek out when things are hard, when things get messy. It's the one that you call during your darkest days. It's the person that you meet and you feel like you've just known them your whole life. And it could be the person you've had the longest history with, but it's a friendship that is on a soul level. It's a friendship that doesn't feel forced. It just is this deep soul connection that is sort of effortless. It's this energetic bond that you have typically with only a couple people in your life. And I tend to think of these friendships as, my support system, my community, my tribe. And when I go back and I think about, okay, how did those relationships start? How did those friendships become bosom friends? I mean, it really started with how I chose to show up in those relationships. I mean, there was obviously a quick connection. There was typically that sort of like, oh my God, we have so much in common, or I feel like I've known you forever and we just met. But there was a particular way in which I was showing up. And I think that fostered the kind of connection that I still have to this day with these girl friends that I'm thinking of. And there's sort of a foundation that can be set in a way to really show up in those kinds of friendships as an amazing friend. And, it may not be every friendship that you have, and probably isn't. I like to think of friendships like the rings. If you are at the center of a circle, then you have like a ring that maybe is a little bit outside of yourself. And those are going to be these bosom friends. These are your soul sisters. These are the people that you cry with, the people that you celebrate with. I mean, these are your people. And then you might have an outer ring that are people that, you would invite to your wedding, or you would invite to a shower of some kind, but maybe aren't the people that you're confiding all of your stuff with, but they are people that you might connect with every once in a while, on a regular basis, and you do share part of your life with. And then that outer circle are going to be more people that are like your acquaintances, right? And so I think it's important to think about, these people and where do they fall in those rings of friendship. And when you think about how you want to show up with these people in your innermost ring, these people that are your soul sisters, I think that it ultimately starts, and I want to start the conversation here, it starts with a couple of presuppositions. It comes with and starts with these sort of fundamental beliefs. And the first presupposition is that, and I kind of have to go into my relationships with these beliefs. Number one, my friend knows best. My friend knows best. I have to go into the relationship believing that my friend knows best. I am not here to fix her or change her or convince her. I mean, I trust that she knows ultimately what is best for her life. I trust her. The second presupposition that I'm coming in with is that my girlfriend is not broken. I don't have to pity her. I don't have to feel sorry for her. I believe that ultimately she is fully resourceful and capable. And start thinking, like, if you believed these things about your friend coming into a friendship, that is going to shift the way that you show up in this relationship. If I believe that my friend knows best, it's going to shift how I communicate with her. It's going to shift what kind of advice that I give her. If I believe that my friend is not broken, you better believe that I'm going to look at her in a completely different way than if I think, oh God, like you should probably fix this, or yeah, you're really weak in this area. Now, the third presupposition is that judgment and shame helps no one. So in my friendships, my friends are free to be themselves with me. I sort of can hold space for all of their messy. And as my old friend Teresa, she would say, the shit with the champagne, which oh my God, it's such a Southern thing to say. The shit with the champagne. And there's room for both here. And I think that that's really important as a presupposition, that judgment and shame helps no one. So when I look at my friend, I am going to remove judgment and I'm going to remove shame when I'm communicating with her. The fourth presupposition is that we don't have to compete. Now, ladies, I tell you what, this is a really important presupposition. If you are going to become a bosom friend with somebody, if you are truly going to be an amazing friend and have quality, incredible friendships, number 4, we don't have to compete. And honestly, I feel like there is such a weight that is lifted off the shoulders, because I think what's so hard about female friendships is that society has, in a way, given us this sort of picture that women are catty, they're competitive, they're always in comparison and judging. And to me, in my friendship, comparison has no place. We respect that each of us is on their own journey and we're all in our own season of life. And I don't have to have this mentality inside my friendships of sort of keeping up with the Joneses in order to belong. And to me, if you're going to have quality, real friendships, you've got to check that competition, that need to keep up with your friends, whether that is in your body or your financial status or your clothing or your finances or your house or your car or where your children go to school or how smart your children are or how they're excelling or not excelling or, all of those sort of ego-driven things that are so easy. I mean, I just think of sort of the Stepford Wives as a gross archetype of this kind of competition. But it's really easy for us in our female friendships to revert to this. We start comparing. We start judging. We start competing. And so to me, that fourth presupposition has to be, we do not have to compete. So powerful. All right, the final presupposition, and I think this is the most important, is the presupposition that I am lovable. This is the biggest and really the most important of all. One that, honestly, would require an entire episode or honestly, probably an entire month's topic all on its own. But this is so important because our friendships are just a mirror for how we feel about ourselves, what we believe about ourselves. It's almost as though our friends are reflecting back to us our internal beliefs about ourselves. If I am constantly beating myself up and believe that something is wrong with me and that it's usually my fault or that I'm not enough, I'm going to attract the type of relationships that reinforce those beliefs. However, when I believe that I am lovable and that I am worth knowing and that I deserve healthy relationships in my life, then those are the kinds of relationships that I draw in. It all really begins and ends here. So we have to start, before we get into the specifics of how to be a great friend, we have to start with those presuppositions. My friend knows best. My friend is not broken. Judgment and shame help no one. We don't have to compete. And ultimately, that I am lovable. That's where it all begins. And that with that kind of framework. So now let's dig into some of the specific ways to be a great friend. So I want to go over 5 ways to be a phenomenal, I'm going to use that word, phenomenal friend. Because when we are a phenomenal friend, we have phenomenal friendships. Hey y'all, I just wanted to interrupt this episode real quick to remind you to subscribe to this podcast. I know that emails get lost in your spam folder, so subscribing means my episodes come right to your phone. So go ahead, click that little subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any of the Living Fully Alive episodes. And if you like this episode, make sure to check out my previous episodes about this topic of community and friendship. All right, now back to this conversation about being a phenomenal friend. So the first way is reliability. And this is sort of basic, but it often is one of the issues that we don't think is that important. But if you say that you are going to be there or be somewhere, you are going to do it. That your friends ultimately can count on you. For example, when you say that you're going to show up, I know that you're going to show up, that you are reliable. And that might seem like a small thing, but to be able to count on our friends, to be able to say, hey, I've got this important thing going on, or my child has this kind of recital, or today is moving day, or I'm doing this event this weekend, or I'm teaching an essential oil class, or whatever it is, that your friend, I shouldn't say your friend, because I guess we're focusing right on ourselves. So when you say, see how easy that is to like go into what your friend should do. But when you choose to say, hey, sweet friend, like I'm going to be there for you at the birth of your baby, or even something just small like, coming over for a game night, or coming over for a book club, or coming over for a glass of wine, or whatever it is, or going to dinner, that you show up, that they know that your word means something, that you're reliable, that you are the kind of friend who is going to show up when you say that you're going to show up. Because otherwise, what do you really have? I mean, at the end of the day, it's kind of like if you don't show up for your people in your life, like that doesn't foster trust. And so to me, being able to have that kind of reliability makes you really a phenomenal friend. Now, the second way to be a phenomenal friend is to be the vault. I love this one. I think this is so important, especially in our day and age where I feel like everything is just sort of splashed around and everybody is gossiping. I mean, that was one of the telltale signs, honestly, of my toxic relationships, my toxic friendships that I talked about in my conversation that I had with Lindsley the other day about toxic friendships. And we were just talking about how when it gets to the place where all you're doing is gossiping about other people, that is not a healthy friendship. And yet, I don't know where that started, but I think that that's really common amongst women, is a lot of the times that our bond, what brings us together, is sort of having a common enemy. And that may be too strong of a word, because I don't know that we would necessarily ever think of it like a quote unquote enemy. But there is typically a way that women connect with each other is about talking about other people, about sharing the dirt on other people. Oh, well, did you hear, so-and-so, blah, 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 blah. Or in the South, the very clever way of saying, hey, we need to pray about so-and-so because I heard this was happening, which is a very spiritual way of gossiping. And anytime that there is that condescending kind of conversation, to me, how can you trust the other person? And so for me, the second way to be a phenomenal friend is to be the vault, holding whatever you're talking about with your friend, you hold that in confidence. And this really is a rare quality in a friend. And it's sort of like, no matter what they tell you, that you're not going to tell someone else, no exceptions. And this ultimately stems from personal integrity. When you tell somebody that you won't share, you keep your word. You don't share. And it's so tempting, again, because this is a way that we've been taught to connect. And especially when you're in a conversation with somebody else and they're talking about something that you go, oh, this reminds me of what so-and-so just told me. And it's usually a way of deflecting whatever's going on in your own personal life to show up and talk about somebody else. And it's that way to connect. And so having personal integrity is, even when you want to, even when it feels totally relevant, even when it feels justified, even when you think, oh, this might be helping somebody else to share the story of your other friend with this person you're in communication with at the time, that you don't. You keep your word, that unless you've asked that person permission to share a part of their story or to share what they've told you in confidence, that you don't share it. I sort of like to think of myself as having a type of like therapist confidentiality almost when I speak with my friends, that what gets shared here stays here. Sort of like that, adopting the idea that what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. And I really mean that. Like, my friends know that I'm not going to be sharing their stuff with other people. And if I, for example, like even in a conversation, it's like looking, like let's say I'm with that person that shared something with me, and then there's a third person or a fourth person in the communication, and I'm not sure that that person has shared with that third and fourth person what they personally shared with me. Before I go and assume that, I can look at that first person and say, hey, would you mind if I shared about what we talked about the other day? And it gives that person the opportunity to say, yeah, go for it, or I'd rather you didn't. But at least I'm asking before I'm sharing whatever it is that was told to me in confidence. So be the vault. And knowing, like, I have several people in my life that are the vault that literally would not share anything that I shared with them. And those people are a little bit few and far between. But I tell you what, those are my people. Those are the people that I truly trust the most. And that is what I want to be as well to the people in my life, to be that vault for them. Now, the third way to be a phenomenal friend is to listen with empathy. Now, there is a big difference between sympathy and empathy. And I think this is an important distinction, because if we're not careful, we fall into that role of enabling. We fall into that role of pitying. We fall into that role of being condescending. We can fall into that space of sort of allowing somebody to stay in victim state. So there's a big difference between sympathy and empathy. And to me, I'm not an expert at this, so I am going to rely on our fabulous Brene Brown to explain this even better. She says, I feel so sorry for you is different than when we approach somebody with empathy and we say, I get it. I feel with you and I've been there. So I feel so sorry for you is sort of like, oh, it's like kind of condescending, like you poor little thing. But when we can show up with empathy, where we can identify and say, I get it. Like I hear you and I see you, I feel you, I've been there. And Brene says, she says, if you want to see a shame cyclone turn deadly, throw one of these at it. Oh, you poor thing. Or the incredibly passive aggressive Southern version of sympathy, bless your heart. Y'all. Like, oh, bless your heart. Empathy on the flip side is about being able to truly listen and hold the space for the people without trying to fix, without silent judgment, and without an agenda. Truly being present for whatever comes up without offering any shame to the situation. You allow your friends to be exactly where they are. And if they are crying and if they look like a heaping mess, it looks like handing them a glass of wine and a box of tissues while leaving your phone in the other room. That is empathy. That is holding space for somebody. That is showing up and sitting with somebody in their stuff. And I tell you what, that is one of the most healing things that you can do as a friend, is not try to fix, is not pity, is not undermine what they're going through. But if nothing else, sitting there in silence and nodding your head and saying, I hear you. I hear you. This is hard. I get it. I've been there. And if you haven't been there, you can say something like, I haven't been there, but I will listen. And not running in to fix and judge. It goes back to those presuppositions that they're not broken, that they are fully capable and have everything that they need within them to get to where they need to go. That you can hold space, that you can listen with empathy. And listening requires presence. It requires that you turn your phone over. It requires that you make space to be with them as long as they need to talk. Within reason, of course, but that you show up, that you really listen, that you hear them. Because at the end of the day, we all just want to be seen and heard, don't we? I feel like that is the core. We all just want to be seen and heard and reminded that we matter. And so being able to listen with empathy is so healing. And that is an incredible way to be a phenomenal friend. Now, the fourth way to be a phenomenal friend is to believe the best. And again, that sort of goes back to that presupposition. But being able to look at your friend and know when maybe they're making a bad decision or things that are not going in the way that you maybe thinks that it should go, but believing in their best. Always holding that vision for them. That is a way to be an amazing friend. I think it's so easy to get sort of wrapped up and roped into somebody's story and their story that they have about their life, and potentially in a moment when life feels particularly overwhelming and they're in a dark place and they're playing out worst case scenarios. And not in a way that is invalidating to what they're going through, but even just silently sort of holding and believing the best for them, holding the space for them to show up in a new way and change instead of locking them into that spot. I think that's so powerful because I think oftentimes we can sometimes see our friends as weak, or man, they're never going to get out of this, or they don't have the strength to do this, or maybe their life is going to kind of just end up being really, really crappy. But know that we hold on to the vision of their best, most fulfilling, healthiest life, knowing that they are in that moment doing the best that they can. And I think part of the gift of a phenomenal friend is when we can look at them and remind them of their soul, of their heart, remind them who they are, remind them of their purpose and the bigger story that's at work, helping them to believe their own best, reminding them that this is a season and not the definition of their life, not their identity, that this is a moment. And of course, listening with empathy, validating, hearing, honoring where they are, but reminding them the truth of who they really are, reminding them how lovable they are. And I know that for me, being a friend is saying, I hear you and you're doing such a good job. I just had this conversation with my friend the other day. She called me up. She was having a really tough time. She's a new mom and exhausted, and she's gained some weight, and she was judging her body and feeling really exposed and feeling like she was failing, and just a lot of judgment, a lot of self-criticism. And my job as a friend was not to sit there and fix her, not to enter into that with her and just believe like, yeah, it's always going to be hard, or, you're always going to be in this place, but to affirm her and say, you're doing a really good job. You are a phenomenal mother. You are an incredible employee. You are really doing a lot. And you know what? You're right. This is just hard. This is just a hard season. And I hear you. And you've got this. This is not going to last forever. This is a season. This too shall pass. Now, I can only say that after deep listening, because I want to make sure that she knows that where she's at in that moment, I can hear her, I can empathize with her, and then say, but there is light at the end of this tunnel, and you are enough. And who cares what anybody thinks about your body? This is what happens. You're under a lot of stress, and this is how your body is processing it, and you're still lovable. Even with gaining weight or whatever, you are so lovable. You don't have to prove your worthiness. If you gain 100 pounds, if you lose 100 pounds, you are the same to me. You are the same to God, and you are lovable. And the only thing that matters is you, and you. So what do you need? How can you love yourself more? How can you nurture yourself more? It's like I'm holding that space and believing in their best and reminding them of their best, the truth of who they are. So that's the fourth way to be a phenomenal friend. The fifth and final way to be a phenomenal friend is to challenge them. And I like this one. I am a 2 on the Enneagram. I'm not kind of like, that's not my nature, is to challenge. I'm pretty I would say I'm a recovering people pleaser. But I do like to keep the peace, but I also, as a coach, I know the value in holding somebody to their highest self. And so part of how I do that, part of how I challenge them, is I don't let my friends talk bad about themselves or talk negativity over their lives. The minute that I hear them in a cycle of limiting beliefs that affirm that they are the victim of their life, or that their life is horrible, or they are fat, and that they're always going to be alone, and that there are, no good men out there, I sort of lovingly, and that's really key, I lovingly hit the pause button, and I can ask her for permission, and I can say, hey, can I challenge you in this right now? Because it's important for me as the friend to not be attached to the result. My job isn't to fix them or to fix their thinking or whatever. But when I see my friends sort of self-abasing and sort of just being in this cycle of just hating on themselves and negatively talking about their lives and affirming all the things that they don't want. It's sort of like, hey, I want to be able to say, listen, wait a second here. And so if I see something that's better for them, more beneficial for them, where they could shift this or do something different or not, and again, not being attached to what they end up choosing, I want to lovingly offer them a different way of looking at something. And again, believing that they're going to make the best decisions for themselves. But I do want to be able to have that permission to challenge them, to say, hey, wait a second here. I hear you're saying this. And what if that weren't true? I hear that you're saying this. I know that it feels that way. And one of the phrases that I use from Tara Brach, it feels real, but it's not true. It feels real, but it's not true. Because it's like one of those moments when I hear my friend and they're in the spiral of lies. Like I have a friend and she'll call me and she's talking about relationships or whatever. And she's sort of in that spiral, right? Where she's really feeling like there's no good men out there. It's never going to happen. It's because of her. And she's really, blaming herself and there's a lot of shame involved. It's like, hang on a second. Fear doesn't get a vote here. What's the truth? And again, this is pointing them back to the truth of who they are, that they are so lovable. Shifting their way of thinking about the world, about other people, about men, about relationships, about love, about whatever it is, about money, about kids, about family. And when it's appropriate, lovingly challenge them a little bit. Hey, I know that it really feels like that. But fear doesn't get a vote. Shame doesn't get a vote. Your mom doesn't get a vote. Your dad doesn't get a vote. Your second grade teacher, it's kind of like, whose voice is that? Who's coming in here and hijacking the mental conversation in your brain? Because that's not true. That's not true. And it's like, it's challenging them a little bit. And of course, I always ask them permission. Hey, can I challenge you on this? Or hey, can I push back on that? And because I've already established trust, usually the answer is yes. Sometimes it's no. Sometimes they're not in the space where they want that. It's like, okay, great. I'm just going to listen. But when there is that open door, when there is that yes, it's like, okay, thank you. Now, here's a different way of looking at it. Or have you thought about this? Or whatever it is, challenging them. But when I think about these soul sisters, these bosom friends, they are just incredible gifts in my life. I'm so grateful to have a few of these women in my life. And I remind them often, of what a godsend that they are. Hold on to those people in your life. Create that beautiful space for them to have a soft landing, to be their most authentic selves. Shower them with love and acceptance at every turn. Allow yourself to keep showing up authentically in those relationships as well. Because when you can be reliable, when you are known as the vault, when you can show up and listen deeply with empathy, believing their best and challenging them when necessary, oh my God. Not only are you a phenomenal friend, but you are going to attract phenomenal friends in your life. Being able to receive the love that you give. That it's healing for our lives to have those people in our lives. So experiment with this. Try this out. Consistently show up as this phenomenal friend to the people in your lives. And again, when it's healthy, when these people are safe, then it's only going to improve and enhance these friendships. And so it's time to take that self-inventory. Number one, how are you showing up in your friendships? Do you need to alter anything? Do you need to be a better vault? Do you need to be more reliable? Really taking an inventory of how you're showing up. And, I think secondly, the people that get this phenomenal side of you, this fully present friend, it's sort of like, have these people in your life, is that a healthy, safe person to offer that to? Is it reciprocal? Are they sharing that with you as well? How does that look? Are these the kinds of people that in a way have earned the right to have you show up in this capacity. Because it might be a toxic friendship. It might be somebody who isn't willing to give that to you in return. And those are exhausting kinds of relationships where it's, all giving and no take. So explore that. Be willing to get honest with yourself about that in a way that's not judgmental, but just sort of, again, taking inventory, observing, seeing what's true. And so I'll end with this quote from Brené Brown. She says, "Connection is the energy that is created between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued. When they can give and receive without judgment." So guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this final episode of this month's topic of community. I'm so excited to see you next week on our brand new topic of the month. So stay tuned. Make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss out on all of that. And of course, if you haven't listened to all the episodes in this month's topic of community, go back, take a listen. I think they're pretty amazing. I think you're going to find a lot of golden nuggets and gems in each of the episodes. And so to finalize this episode, just remember that the purpose of life is to be grateful, to be great, and to be full. I'll see y'all next week. Bye. If you love today's episode, make sure to share it with your girlfriends and invite them into this month's topic of community. And if you want to keep the discovery journey going of living more fully alive, check out all my past episodes from season 1 of the podcast over at maryhyatt.com/show. Plus, you'll be able to grab the show notes from this episode along with the essential oil recipe of the month that will help you find the courage to create a community that you love and nourish your body, mind, and soul along the way. Again, that's maryhyatt.com/show. See y'all next week.